This video is Chapter 7, Notes, Part 1, all about pigments. Chapter 7 is about photosynthesis. There are some connections and some contradictions with what we learned during respiration. But thinking big picture, the goal of photosynthesis is for a plant to build sugars. The plant will then destroy those sugars to make ATP. So plants do both photosynthesis and cellular respiration. They build the sugar and then it gets broken down during respiration. So it is not as though animals do one and plants do the other. No. Animals, of course, do not do photosynthesis, so animals only do respiration, but plants do both photosynthesis and cellular respiration. Our journey through photosynthesis will begin with an introduction on big picture, what is photosynthesis, and also what are pigments. So during photosynthesis, a plant is using light to build sugars. That light, of course, is coming from the sun. Not all organisms do photosynthesis. So in order to do photosynthesis, you need to have the right machinery. You need to have the right chloroplast. So photosynthesis occurs in autotrophs, which is another word for like a plant, and producers, which is also another word for a plant. The opposites would be heterotroph and consumer, and animals would be considered heterotrophs and consumers. Photosynthesis occurs in an organelle called the chloroplast. The chloroplast is similarly shaped to the mitochondria. It's like a bean shape. And it also, as you can see in this image, has an inner membrane that's extremely folded. So again, those membranes will come into play. So when we are talking about photosynthesis, we are talking about what's happening in the chloroplast. There's two main parts of the chloroplast. The first is the thylakoid. The thylakoid is a disc that has a membrane surrounding it. I kind of think of the thylakoid as like a stack of pancakes. And then the syrup around the pancakes is the stroma. So the stroma is the liquid that's around the thylakoid. And we are very zoomed in on a plant cell. We are inside of the chloroplast. Evolutionarily, scientists believe that chloroplasts and mitochondria were once free-living organisms. And the reason that they conclude and believe that is because both chloroplasts and mitochondria are surrounded by a membrane, much like those around the outside of every single cell. We will learn more about membranes here in a few weeks. But the chloroplast and the mitochondria do have a membrane around them. Even further, and really kind of weird and unique, is that the chloroplast and the mitochondria contain their own DNA. That DNA is circular, much like the circular DNA that's found in a bacteria cell. So even though plants and animals are considered to be eukaryotes, meaning they have a nucleus, it's believed that at one point that eukaryotic cell engulfed a smaller prokaryotic cell. That's shown in this diagram. So here we have our giant eukaryotic cell. It has a nice big nucleus inside of it. And at one point, billions of years ago, it's believed that that eukaryotic cell engulfed a prokaryote, and it was good for both the prokaryote and the eukaryote to be living like essentially with one another. Since it was beneficial for both organisms, it has continued through evolutionary time, meaning that today we see that our eukaryotic cells contain what resembles prokaryotic cells. Photosynthesis occurs in 2 steps. You are expected to know quite a bit of detail regarding the first step and significantly less detail about the second step. So first we'll go through this big picture, then a little bit more on pigments. Photosynthesis occurs in 2 steps. Step 1, they call the light reactions. They are called the light reactions because they depend on light, meaning that they will only occur when sunlight is present. So light is considered to be a reactant. I use this box system. It's just a chart to show me what's going in and what's going out of the chloroplast. The light reactions occur in the thylakoid, so they're in the little pancakes. They require light. They also use water. You may recall that water was a waste product in respiration due to the oxygen that was the final electron acceptor and all those moving hydrogens. So even though water was a waste product in respiration, here in photosynthesis, it is a reactant, and water is required for photosynthesis to occur. During the light reactions, a gas is produced as trash, and plants release that trash gas, and that gas is oxygen. Also, during the light reactions, a very small amount of ATP is made. It is not enough ATP to sustain the cell. To remind you, plants will still do respiration. So they make a little bit of ATP, and then they also make an electron carrier. So that will be a similar idea to what we saw in cellular respiration. In respiration, the electron carriers were called FADH2 and NADH. In this one, we have a slightly different molecule, which is called NADPH. So it is an electron carrier. More on that in the next video. The second reaction in photosynthesis is the dark reactions, meaning that they are independent and do not require light. However, usually these reactions are occurring simultaneously at the same time, and it's not as though the plant is going to wait for nighttime to finish building sugars. A lot of reactions can occur in a cell at the same time, so to be most efficient, generally plants are doing both of these reactions at the same time. Everything in biology goes by many different names, so you can see the dark reactions are also known as the Calvin cycle, named after the scientist who helped to reveal a lot of information about them. The dark reactions occur in the liquid of the chloroplast, which is called the stroma. It's like the syrup around those pancakes. And the dark reactions use a gas called carbon dioxide. That gas was trash in cellular respiration, but here in photosynthesis, a plant uses carbon dioxide. Also, the entire goal of photosynthesis is to make sugar, so that is an output. So essentially what we have in photosynthesis, we've got some reactants, which are light, water, and carbon dioxide. Those 3 are all required for photosynthesis to occur. And the products, what gets made, are oxygen, which is garbage, and glucose, which the plant will then break apart in respiration. Now a bit more on pigments to conclude this intro video. Pigments are the molecules that absorb light, so they are used then in the light reactions. Sunlight consists of multiple wavelengths of visible light. We see those different wavelengths as different colors. So the sun is emitting a lot of different wavelengths. Plants can use some of those wavelengths to do photosynthesis. Chlorophyll A, you've heard of chlorophyll for sure. Chlorophyll A is the main pigment in plants. Chlorophyll A is what gives plants their green color. So when sunlight hits chlorophyll A, the sun is emitting all wavelengths of light, and that plant is going to take in all of the usable light, and it will reflect the colors that are unusable. So green is unusable to a plant. So when green light hits the plant, the green light is reflected back to your eyeball and you see green because it is unusable by the plant. The other wavelengths, red, purple, and so on, are used by the plant. So red and purple hit the plant and then they are absorbed and they go into the plant for the plant to use them. More on what they'll be used for in just the next video. So something that appears yellow would have all wavelengths hit the plant, hit the chloroplast. Yellow would be unusable and yellow would then get reflected. Every other color but yellow is absorbed by that leaf. And then similarly, in a red plant, red is the color that's reflected. Red is unusable. All other colors are absorbed by that plant. You may at some point see some graphs that appear like this. This tells me which colors are absorbed by the plant. So when I see my green plant, I know that green light is not absorbed by that plant. This graph is measuring absorption. A green plant can use really well purple and red wavelengths of light. So those are my spikes on that graph. In my purple plants, which are located on the right of this slide, you can see that blue and red do not get absorbed. So blue and red are coming to my eyeball for me to see. And that then appears purple as I see with my eyeball here, blue and red. What these purple plants are using, what they are absorbing, is the green wavelengths of light. So different colored plants have different pigments that absorb different wavelengths of light. To conclude, there's one more graph that shows a variety of all the different types of pigments that are in plants. This graph is measuring absorption. So I can see that chlorophyll B, for example, really absorbs well wavelengths around 450 nanometers. Chlorophyll B cannot use green light. Chlorophyll B also can use light around a wavelength of 650 nanometers. So by studying these absorption graphs, I can tell which pigments use, meaning which pigments absorb which colors of light.